Okay, I'm Roger, and to explain your comment about your dog, my PhD supervisor, Professor Phil Woods from Southport, he always called me Roger the Dodger. I'm still not sure if it's a compliment or not. Anyway, thanks to the network and to CPI for inviting me here. I'm very glad to be here in Birmingham, first time in Birmingham. I come from this city of Trondheim, in the middle of Norway. It's not in the middle of nowhere, but Norway. Can be seen as in the middle of nowhere. It's a beautiful city by the fjord, mountains in the back, and try to point with the mouse. Yeah, the nice big university campus in the middle of the city. It's the biggest university in the country now. We got a very nice cathedral, also the biggest in the country. My cathedral is more to the left here. That's the stadium for the Rosenborg Football Club. 11 times in a row in the Champions League, actually. Yeah. Beating Real Madrid at home, 2-0. Where our coach said, "What do you think of the Real Madrid players this night?" Well, he said, "At least they tried." So, brave people coming from Trondheim. That was a summer picture. This is a spring photo from Norway, taken in June this year by a friend of mine. So, yes, it is in the middle of nowhere. And this is my hospital, the Broset Hospital, part of the St. Olav's University Hospital. It was originally built as a leper hospital in the 1860s, and has been a special hospital, the only high-secure hospital in Norway from 1923 till 1985, where we regionalized all our secure services. At the most, it was up to 300 patients there. Now it's 16. So they have plenty of space, obviously. This is the OT department. This is where the patients are, 3 wards plus 1 national assessment ward for learning disability. And this is the old building where the offices and etc. is. I know I shouldn't tell you this, but in Norway, high secure services are extremely well staffed. We have, as I said, 16 patients, and we have a staff patient ratio of 5:1. So on this admission ward with 5 patients, there are never less than 6 nurses on duty, even during the night shift. And on normal day shift there will be 9 to 10 nurses. So we have maybe not so much, let's say, perimeter security as you have in your high secure facilities here in the UK, but we have more staff, so we can, let's call it human security. But it is fenced in, so all our patients are saying, "Don't fence me in," on daily basis, I guess. Our university is most famous for and we're very proud of it, the Nobel Prize in Medicine last year. 2 psychologists, actually. Quite an achievement for a small university. But, as I said, my cathedral, the Rosenborg Stadium, these names are maybe just names for you, but all these guys used to play for Rosenborg and later on went to the Premiership in the UK, so these are big names as well, in my world anyway. So, the background for me being here and being invited, I would like to think it's because I'm an excellent researcher and a fantastic presenter. But I think actually the thing that made my stay here available or possible is that the nice guidance published in May this year and recommended, besides the DASA, the Broset Violence Checklist, my PhD work and my research work, as a recommended instrument for clinical judgment and risk assessment. I put the word actuarial in brackets because I don't actually agree with the nice guidelines here. It's more like I might come back to this, but it's more like a crossover instrument between structured professional judgment and actuarial judgment. And also in Denmark, the Danish version of NICE guidelines, they have more or less come to the same conclusion, saying that mental health care staff should use the BVC in their clinical work in adult patient services. Having said that, the checklist, the BVC, has been tested out and tried in a variety of settings, including dementia care, nursing homes, geriatric wards, social offices, as we call it in Norway, and also for adolescents, so in quite different kind of settings. Just this statement before I start talking about the BVC. It's urgent for me to let you know that I really think that risk assessment should be systematic and also be a part of a teamwork. I think all risk assessments should be made in teams, preferably. And of course, risk assessment is about this: treatment planning and risk management. So, in the business of risk assessment, and believe me, it is a big, big business, especially in the US and Canada, I guess. One can think, when I travel around in the country and train people using the BVC, they think that they should be good on risk prediction. But the key point with risk assessment and risk prediction is to become good on risk management. So these two should always be hand in hand, and never forget that, please. Risk assessment, big industry, yes, very much growing. The Monahan Group started this work in 1981, first publications and studies. And up till the late 80s, there was no systematic risk assessment when it comes to challenging behavior at all. It was all based on clinical judgment, clinical intuition, and quite a few studies indicated that it was actually worse than by chance doing that. And that's when we got the instruments coming in. So in the early 90s, we got a handful of instruments or tools for risk assessment. And today we might say we have too many, too much to choose between, and not all of them are actually very good. The first publication on BVC came in '95, and the HCR20, it's called the gold standard of risk assessment from Canada. Do you know about the HCR20? Yeah. Made for originally for prison population, and it's run for a forensic population, but widely used all over the world. So there's a vast, big number of studies, disseminations, articles, and so on out there. And just to illustrate, this is I can point with the mouse instead. As you can see, sorry. It's a real increase in number of studies, and this is only up to 2008, and it's indeed increasing further on. This next slide is from the HCR20 version 3. It was released, I think, this spring, It was translated into Norwegian this summer. And I could talk half an hour just about these 7 steps of structured professional judgment. Especially, I would have focused on these scenarios of violence, because that's what you do when you do a proper good risk assessment. You make a scenario, preferably with colleagues, and you plan what to do, how to manage the violence using these scenarios. But with only 20 minutes left, I have to focus on the presence of risk factors, which is about my checklist. As I said, there are plenty of checklists out there. Far too many, I think, and far too many of them are not properly tested in different settings. So a couple of weeks ago, I was in a hospital in northern Norway, and they're using HCR20 for risk assessment in an acute unit where patients stay at the maximum of 3 days. And doing a proper HCR20 risk assessment procedure takes at least a week. So it's a waste of time and effort. So it's about choosing the right tool for the right population, for the right purpose, I think. So, the BVC. developed at Surprise, Broset Hospital in Trondheim. It was in the early 90s that we were doing a big qualitative study called 1,000 Years of Experience. It was when the old special hospital merged together with another secure ward from another part of the area. One of the ward managers came up with this idea that what if we look retrospectively at changes in behavior or changes in symptoms written down in the nursing documentation system prior to an incident, and we have a very good incident record system called the SOAS. So we have a good record of all the incidents. So we were looking for documented changes in behavior 24 hours, up to 24 hours between before an actual incident have taken place. We did so, and we came up with about 65, I think it was 65 changes changes in behavior recorded. One of them we had to skip. It was called dark eyes, which is quite difficult to. But you know, you can see them when the eyes get dark and they're getting angry. Dr. Lineker did a regression analysis, and we came up with 6 items that on our hospital, for our small patient group of 16 forensic patients, male, actually predicted violence within the next 24 hours, violent behavior. So that's where I came in and took with me the checklist into acute wards, nursing homes, geriatric wards in Norway, and later on I will tell you about the research, international research as well. So these are the 6 items that this analysis came up with. We have a definition of each of them, but they are the straightforward meaning in everyday use for everybody. So you don't need a PhD to understand what it means, actually. So all from cleaning staff, kitchen staff, nurses, doctors, psychologists, they all can understand the meaning of these items. This is just a research. This is an example of the research form, the form I used in my research. So I'll give you a very brief introduction to how to use it. There is an online e-learning course. It takes 10 minutes, and you will be fully trained BBC assessor. So what you actually do is that by observing your patients or clients, you fill in this form, online, paper, whatever, as present or not present. Let's say confused. Yes, he's confused. I mean, if in a nursing home, and where I did my research in nursing home, everybody was confused. They were all dementia. But then you're looking into more confused than normal. This is important because some mental health patients, you know, they've been boisterous for the last 15, 20 years, but without being dangerous or violent at all. So if it's an increase in the confusion, or if it's, then you score 1. If not present, you score 0. So you can end up with a maximum sum of 6. That's it. And to all those who said, oh, we don't want more paperwork, we don't want more procedures, this one takes 20 seconds if you're slow. So it shouldn't be any. This is how to understand the scores. It's quite obvious. Above 2, the risk of violence is high. Preventative measures should be taken, and plans about how to manage an attack should be made. That's the whole thing. There's no big manual. There's just one sheet of paper that explains everything. In different versions, this is from America. You can't see the details here, but these are the definitions of the items, how to understand the score. And they have added also a list of interventions in order to evaluate what is actually working for this patient. Ellen Blair in, I think, Ohio did this. So there's online a e-learning program with videos where you can test your skills. Takes 10 minutes, as I mentioned. It's not by professional actors. It's a bunch of nurses from a hospital in the south of Oslo. So don't expect any Oscars from those movies. There's also an app available, created by some friends of mine in Holland who run a software company, and basically used for community nurses or people who actually go out with patients or go out of institutions to see their clients. You just score, and then you have the results on your phone, and you can send it by email to your own email address at work or to your boss or whatever. So research. There's plenty. It's really took off in the early 2000s. And talking about research and being a nurse, Chief Medical Officer Willer in Oslo, he said that the knowledge that are forced into the nurses is completely dead ballast. The brain is not capable of receiving it. And you might say, okay, this is stupid Norwegian, but Professor Pirquet in Vienna said in 1927 that one cannot think of nurses doing scientific research. Their ability to think originally are more seldom than in men. So, yes. So I won't present any tables or figures or any difficult stuff. Just a brief summary. Time is running out as well. So a brief summary of some of the most important research, and I'm bold enough to mention my name first, my thesis from 2008. And since the early start in 95, we had the first non-forensic studies in 97, and the first publications in 98. 2008, Professor Abderhalm in Switzerland did this RCT study on acute units in Switzerland, which is up to date, I think, except maybe there's a START study, Start Short-Term Assessment of Risk and Treatability, which might have been RCT, but this is, I think, the only, up till then, the only RCT study with any risk assessment instrument. And it was followed up later on by Roland van der Sande in Holland. I will get back to that. So today, there are more than 20 publications from around the world on BVC only. And the latest one is from China, from Shanghai. This guy sent an email and asked for permission to use the checklist in his research, and he said, I'm sorry, it's going to be a very small study. We only have 1,000 beds in our hospital. But I guess that's China. Anyway, this is the work from Abderhalm, 2008, British Journal of Psychiatry. As you can see, and this is where we link the use of restrictive measures and risk assessment. Okay, the number of severe violent incidents dropped by 41%, and the reduction in use of coercion measures dropped 27%. It's quite exceptional. And the Sande in Holland in 2011, 68% reduction in aggressive incidents and 45% reduction in time in seclusion. So the link between risk assessment and reducing coercive measures is quite obvious. And most recent in Denmark, this is a PhD work by Hvid Hjelm, white helmet it means in English. He looks like a Viking as well. 48% reduction, it's from October this year. 48% reduction in violent incidents in this hospital outside Copenhagen. And it's very nice figures. The percentage is very good, extremely good actually. But imagine behind those figures, there are people. There are colleagues who are not being maybe hurt for life. There are patients, clients that don't feel in need to attack someone. So, I mean, if it's only 10% would please me, that maybe one person not being disabled for his rest of his life or have to leave the business because he can't work in such an environment any longer. So I really want you to keep that in mind. So, conclusion. Am I too fast?
Yeah, you're doing just fine.
It's Friday afternoon anyway. Last speaker of Friday the 13th. How lucky can you get? So, conclusion, the BBC has a growing evidence, etc. You can read this yourself. Yes, you must use standardized measures rather than solely subjective judgments. The BBC allows for reflection and standardization of the behaviors and characteristics typical of violent incidents. And with 20 minutes scoring time, it's obviously easy to incorporate into daily routines. It doesn't take your time. And also, this is also quite important. It's not all about risk assessment, but also risk communication. I remember from my days I've been working in acute care and forensic care for 20 years as a nurse. I went mad sometimes on colleagues who had this feeling that this patient might become violent, but never told me. With using the BBC for each shift, you are in a very effective way communicating to your colleagues. Watch out for Ben in room 12. He's got a high BBC this morning. And then you can actually do something to prevent it. And also for managers, if you ask the director, please, I need 2 extra staff to ward A this weekend, and said, why? Well, we have a feeling that something's going to happen. No, don't spend money on that. But if you could tell him, you have 4 out of 10 patients now have a BBC higher than 2. That director should be brave to refuse you hiring extra staff. So it's for multi-purposes. It's in use all over the world. There's one country missing, came in on email yesterday morning. That's Rwanda, so now we are in Africa as well. But having said all these nice things about risk assessments and telling you how fantastic this BBC tool is, remember one thing. The right to not be a false positive. If you assess someone wrongly as a possible violent patient or a violent person, this stamp, violent, is very difficult to wash away. So please, it needs to be very well assessed with the right tools, with the right setting, and do it in groups, please. It will help. Because we don't want to overdo it like this guy here. So I'll finish with this wonderful Aurora Borealis, the Northern Light. And this is from the Trondheim Fjord last winter. And if you go to my website, you can find all the details. Thank you.